Serious answers only, please. Story 1. In my opinion, the moment you would rather watch pornography and masturbate instead of being intimate with your wife or girlfriend, it's the moment you should realize that something is wrong. Story 2. The definition of an addict is the continued use after suffering consequences. So when it interferes with your life, watching it at work and getting in trouble, causing problems in your relationships, being unable to sustain an erection with your spouse, etc., and you keep going, you are an addict. Story 3. Rest of your life suffers. That's pretty much it with every addiction. If you engage in explicit content featuring Lydia Black for 10 minutes instead of playing Call of Duty or whatever, it's not a problem. Messing up at work because she just released a new post on OnlyFans or elsewhere, and you can't help but look immediately, now that is a huge problem. Story 4. I have seen a guy in front of me on a flight, watching inappropriate content at his seat. If you cannot control your urges and you're watching it in public on a plane, you are watching too much and are addicted. There used to be a girl I worked with. We shared an office at the end of a hallway. Her friends would send her all kinds of videos and some of them were inappropriate. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the details, but if you are watching inappropriate content at work, you are watching too much. Story 5. When your buddy doesn't get excited from seeing anything vanilla anymore, so you start watching progressively more niche stuff. That's the most obvious sign in my opinion. Story 6. Erectile dysfunction. Death grip syndrome. Watching pornography when you don't feel like it. Thinking about pornography too much, e.g. at work, bored arousal, etc. Inability to see yourself sexually. Wanting to take a more passive role in sex. Thinking of pornography during sex. Cuckold fantasies. Sexual shame. Negative attitude towards women, especially promiscuous women. You may not feel all of these, but they are quite common symptoms. I have a lot of them, and they tend to appear time and time again in testimonies and descriptions of pornography addiction. Story 7. Staying up late watching pornography, being late for work or obligations because of pornography, spending any stretch of time watching pornography. I've gone 2 to 4 hours at my worst. Not getting out of bed because of pornography, not being able to reach orgasm unless you go to certain videos, not being able to climax during sex unless you think of a certain scene. Lots of signs. Story 8. In moments of boredom, you gravitate towards adult content. In moments of quietness alone, you gravitate towards adult content. You go onto platforms like Reddit and look at attractive women images at every opportunity. You start spending money on quick fixes for women you'll never meet to get that high from the dopamine of self-gratification, and you would do it as often as you could if your body would allow it. I myself am struggling with it, and it's like an invisible desire to just distract yourself. You don't know when, but it's there, and it gnaws at you mentally. Story 9. When it doesn't bring joy anymore, when you feel disgusted with yourself. Porn ruins my brain, it ruins the way I see women. There is no beauty in porn. Sex is supposed to be a behind closed doors type of activity, and true love should at least be involved. Story 10. I think the biggest issue isn't what you're watching but how you act in real life. If you prefer watching pornography rather than actual sex, or if your need to masturbate is getting in the way of your everyday life. Story 11. At first, you will watch a random video and finish up. But as time goes on, you will spend more than 30 minutes searching for a video just to enjoy, and then you will stop getting excited at your usual video, so you will start watching different sorts of things than normal content. I knew I was crossing the line, so I put an end to it. It's been a week since I stopped, and I'm going strong. Story 12. When you are watching it at work or school, when you would rather masturbate to pornography than have real-life sex, when you think about pornography multiple times a day, when you start looking at women in real life and imagining them naked or in sexual scenarios, mentally undressing them, which is both unhealthy and incredibly creepy, when you have to look at more extreme pornography because the things you used to enjoy do not satisfy you anymore, when you are spending large amounts of money on pornography, especially when there is free content available, when you use all social media sites to look at pornography, when you have dreams about pornography, cannot get an erection during real-life sex, you are experiencing lower back pain from masturbating too frequently, you feel shame about what you are doing, you feel like you are living a double life and lying to your family, friends, or partner, you want to stop but cannot. Anytime you are alone or bored you feel the urge to watch pornography, watching pornography without even masturbating to it, cannot climax during sex because you have death grip syndrome, where you squeeze too hard during masturbation and real sex does not satisfy you anymore, and many more. You do not have to experience all of these things to qualify as addicted. Even just a few of these things are enough. And to be honest, if you are questioning whether or not you are addicted, you probably are. Help is available, and pornography addiction thrives off shame and secrecy. A certified sex addiction therapist and a 12-step program are really helpful at recovering. You can try listening to this podcast, Porn, Betrayal, Sex, and the Experts, on Spotify for free for some really great advice from actual recovered pornography addicts. It is really not something you can quit on your own or by white-knuckling it. You need a support system. And coming from a woman, it does not make you a disgusting bad person. It is really easy to become addicted to, and hard to stop on your own. Hope this helps someone. Story 13. When you actually get an opportunity to hook up with a person and you think to yourself, this person is really hot. Where is the other person? Then you realize the other person is you, and this is an interactive thing. Story 14. Same as the signs of anything else that's becoming a problematic habit. Does going without cause you stress? Do you have trouble going without at work or in other situations where it would be inappropriate? Are you indulging to the exclusion of other aspects of your life? Do you avoid social situations where it would be unacceptable? Does it negatively affect your relationships? Are you spending more money on it than you can afford? Do you take unnecessary risks, legal or otherwise, to service your habit? To put it another way, if it was alcohol instead of pornography, would it be a problem? Story 15. When you can't perform without stimulation from viewing pornography, this is more common than you think, and many people have trouble with it more than they'd like to admit. Contrary to how it sounds, pornography kills your sexual drive and libido. It doesn't increase it. It gets you hooked on the computer or smartphone screen more than it would get you hooked or more attracted to your girlfriend or wife. Pornography addiction is very much like any other addiction, from gambling to drugs or alcohol. However, I always argue it's the worst because of how accessible it is and how under the radar it goes, because it's technically free. The majority of pornography doesn't cost you a subscription or anything, and you always think, just looking can't do any harm, right? The reality is that it's like a forbidden library or a rabbit hole that goes deeper and deeper until the demon rabbit of lust consumes you. Is it really just a coincidence that Playboy's logo is a rabbit? Remember that song White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane? You're never going to catch that white rabbit either, because it doesn't exist. It's not meant to be found because it's meant to get you lost. This is a great analogy for pornography, and I'm going to use it from now on. In my years of struggling with pornography addiction, I've counseled both men and women alike. My own girlfriend had her own addiction to pornography so bad that she thought she'd go low-tech. So she threw out her smartphone and got a flip phone in 2016. Many people think they don't have a problem with pornography, and I get it. You might think you're good and only view pornography maybe a couple of times a week or month, and you're fine with that until eventually you go further down the rabbit hole and start viewing every day, every night, every other hour, probably the whole day watching. I've never met a person who didn't progressively get worse from this, and they all think they're fine. I can honestly tell you from opening up about this myself and being open and honest, a lot of people have confessed to me they have their own problems with pornography. Some you could look at and never guess they'd have trouble with something like that. I've lived long enough to learn this is perhaps the most common secret sin and secret shame that people live with on a daily or weekly basis. Story 16. Don't become the person who becomes so addicted you can't even be with a girl in real life. When I broke up with my ex, I realized I couldn't remember the last time we kissed. It had been more than a year since we last had sex, and 6 months before that. 13 years gone because he'd rather have 10 to 14-hour gaming sessions and engage in self-indulgence all night, every night. Secret emails for OnlyFans and weird, expensive sex toys. It was so bad I tried every kink under the sun: lingerie, cosplay, asking for a threesome. I even said he could have sex with other people. Anything for just an ounce of intimacy. I could come into the room naked and he would be like, "Can you move? I'm in the middle of a game." Or worse, he would say, "When I get to a save point or finish a round, I'll meet you in the bedroom," only for him to forget. My self-esteem was lower than low. I blamed myself, and I still do on some level. I'm weird about mirrors and seeing myself naked. Imagine being so addicted you make your girlfriend hate herself. I'll never be porn star pretty. I was so open for anything sexually. I liked gaming too. I wasn't some awful nag stereotype. Story 17. Like with any other addiction, try stopping for 90 days. If you can't, you are addicted and should see someone such as a coach or therapist. Porn addiction is really common among men. One consequence is erectile dysfunction, meaning you cannot get hard during real sex. Good luck, brother. Story 18. The serious answer is when it starts to interfere with your daily life. You are repeatedly late to work or family obligations from watching pornography. You cannot have sex with your partner because of pornography, or you spend more money than you feel you should on subscriptions or pornography-related items. Story 19. Like any other addiction, when it starts interfering with your life, it's a problem. For example, you can't or won't start a basic function of your life until you have done something first. Story 20. I've recently gone cold turkey from pornography. I used to keep multiple tabs open to watch it. I would watch or listen to it while working or playing video games. That's when I truly knew it was time to stop. Story 21. When your adult film collection is more extensive and better curated than any other collection you have. You know the names and biographies of many adult film performers and are more familiar with their work than with movies, music, or television. For real though, when you think of sex and your mind always goes to adult films instead of a real woman you actually know, that means you are conditioned to adult films and self-gratification instead of real-life interactions. Story 22. I genuinely thought I was addicted to pornography for a while with my ex-girlfriend. It turns out I just wasn't sexually attracted to her. I loved her as a person but just couldn't get there with her. Story 23. Men are hardwired to be visually and auditorily aroused. Some people have a higher sex drive than others. I find that as long as you spend time in nature, it's manageable. Story 24. For me, it was when I couldn't get it up during real sexual encounters. Also, when I tried to stop because I thought the pornography might have had something to do with it, and I couldn't resist the urge to watch. Story 25. When you do it even when you don't want to. When you think about it when you're supposed to be doing something else. When you have to watch it for long periods of time before finding that perfect video. Story 26. When you feel compelled to ask, what are the signs that you are watching too much pornography? Visit your brain on porn and consider quitting cold turkey. Video pornography is essentially addictive to the brain. We're not meant to watch other people have sex. Story 27. My ex was so rough with me, bordering on violent. That is one of the reasons I broke up with him. I am scared of dating now because it seems so many guys are into pornography and choking. Story 28. When you can pretty much only get aroused by either watching explicit content or thinking about the content you watched. Seriously, if there is a woman in front of you naked and you have to picture someone like Alexis Texas or something to become aroused, you need to dial it back. Also, when your searches for explicit content are becoming increasingly bizarre, niche, and depraved. Kinks are fine, fetishes are fine, but if what you're watching isn't something you could possibly discuss with your most progressive, open-minded friends outside the internet, maybe it's time to stay off that part of the web for a while. Especially if you've gotten to the point where anything less than this super niche and bizarre thing is considered boring to you. Finally, when you start wondering if you could get away with viewing it in places you know you're not supposed to. I'm not talking about while your girlfriend is asleep in the next room. I'm talking about at work, at school, in the bathroom of a grocery store, at church, places like that. Even if you don't plan to do anything inappropriate, you just want to look at the photographs, videos, or drawings, don't lie to yourself. You're actively collecting material. You're not admiring the videography and cinematic qualities of white woman takes 4 large men in the behind while husband watches. The point is, you shouldn't even be considering viewing such content in those places, let alone actually doing it regardless of the motivation. Not unless it's actually part of your job or something. Story 29. As with any other addiction, the question is whether what you're doing negatively affects other areas of your life. For example, if you can only be aroused if you try things you usually only see women do in pornography, or if you give up on a social life to stay home exclusively and watch pornography. Story 30. When you start doing it when you're bored, that's when I knew I had to quit. Also, when you need to scroll to like the 50th page, laughing my ass off, exaggerating, but you guys know what I mean. If it takes you that long to find a video to your fancy, then you're desensitized.